All right, welcome everybody back to the Big Douglas Show. It is a Super Monday, not just a Super Monday, but a Victory Monday. I'm Big Doug. He's George Carmi, Adam and Eva, and our special guest today, DC legend Tony Perkins. Tony, how are you?
Hey, Tony.
Thank you so much for hopping on today.
I keep, people keep saying, "Oh, you're a legend, you're a legend." And I think that just means I'm old and I've been around for a long time.
No, you're great.
Well, I guess I don't think you can do a whole lot of DC TV without you. So super pumped that it's a Victory Monday. It did not look that way early on. Tony, can you feel the vibe changing in the district?
Oh, yes, I can. Before I say that, let me first say this. Thank you for having me on. You guys have been wonderful. You've asked a few times. It hasn't worked out. So I'm glad we finally made this happen. And yes, I'm glad it's on a Victory Monday because it sure wasn't looking like that. The vibe, man, you guys know so I went to the first game against Arizona. I had not experienced anything like that at FedEx Field since 2012, the RG3 year. And it certainly was reminiscent of the old days. I'm an old timer. I went to games at RFK Stadium as well. To have a stadium full of Commanders fans, on that particular afternoon, I personally saw maybe 20, maybe 25 Cardinals jerseys. Of course, I saw like 5 or 6 Cowboys jerseys, but
always.
Why are you here? But the enthusiasm was great. I had a conversation with someone about this yesterday, how once that page that we had all been hoping would turn, and sometimes it would seem like it would be getting closer than it would, it wouldn't be happening, but then finally that change in ownership, the reaction to that, I think you can see how this fan base, it's been dormant for a while, for a variety of reasons, mediocre to bad play, horrible ownership, terrible stadium experiences, all of that. But everyone's been there. They want to support this team. This is a Washington football town. My son, who is 20, doesn't know what we know from what it used to be, where you saw Redskins memorabilia everywhere you went. On Sundays, the streets were quiet. People were either at the game or at home watching the game. And I feel that coming back, and it's wonderful. It's amazing that all it took was that change, albeit that's a very big change. But it certainly helps that the team, we've got a good team right now, and they seem to be doing okay. That helps.
Tony, you kind of famously had stepped away from rooting for the team a little bit. It feels like that first of all, you weren't the only one that did that. Right. Second of all, it feels like it's safe to come back now. What would you tell the folks that maybe had decided to do the same thing?
Well, so when I did it, and to be honest, I don't remember, it must have been about 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And I did it very publicly, which was a mistake because I got a lot of hate from fans. But I don't remember what the final straw was at that point, but it was years of frustration of that team I can't tell you how many ways I've seen that team lose. Last minute, not showing up, no effort, all kinds of stuff. You put on top of that the ownership and the stories that just kept coming out, which were awful. And on one particular Sunday, we had a terrible loss. I know it was during the Mike Shanahan years. And I just kind of got on Twitter, which is a mistake, and said, that's it, I'm done. And I've been a fan since I was a little kid. My first game, my dad took me to at RFK Stadium. But you're right, Doug. A lot of people did that. I did it very publicly and got a lot of criticism for it. Although I also got a lot of support. People saying, "Hey, we've all been there. We've done the same thing." and all of that. So I actually got more hate when I came back from fans who were like,
Oh,
you
really?
don't deserve to be a fan and all this kind of stuff. But I came back years ago. In fact, I've been a season ticket holder for many years up until this last year. Well, last year I was, and then I let my tickets lapse this past off season. So of course, now everything's great. But I got my season tickets to take my son to the games, and so he grew up. This was his teen years. He and I, this was our thing, going to the games every Sunday. And it took. He didn't see a win. It was our 7th game before he saw a win, and it was so frustrating and disappointing and all of that kind of thing that, finally I said, okay, you know what? You're in college now. You're not as available. We'll take a break. We'll buy tickets for the games we want to go to. I think now, so I came back earlier, but I think now certainly is time to jump on board again. I don't consider, there are fair weather fans. And I consider a fair weather fan someone who is, week after week, I'm in, I'm out, they suck. Oh, we're great. We're going to a Super Bowl. People who've supported this team or have wanted to support this team for a long time have gone through a lot. And I completely understand people not buying the tickets, not buying the merchandise, not going. But boy, I think there's been a period here. I think Ron Rivera, for his strengths and weaknesses, I think in the long run, we're going to remember him as being a transitional coach who really came in and changed the culture in that locker room. He had to deal with some of it on the outside as well, which is really unfair. He shouldn't have had to deal with that. But he also got this team. We're a good team right now, and that's been built over the last couple of years. So he's got this team at a place where it's all coming together. Now we've got Eric Bieniemy in there. We've got, I think, better coaches in place and that kind of thing. So I feel like this is truly the beginning of a new era. And I'm very optimistic that we are going to get back to being a regular NFL football team that competes and does things like what they did yesterday, and we have fun.
Some of the stats from yesterday: 35 points, the most since 2020, an 18-point road comeback, the largest since 1990, 2-0, first time since 2011. Just incredible. And the Eric Bieniemy effect, I think, is real.
Yep.
That you could see the in-game adjustments that they made, not just this week, but the first week. I don't think we've seen since maybe Gibbs. It's wild to say that, but I think that's true.
Yep.
Okay. Each week we're going to start a new segment on Mondays. We're going to do compliment sandwiches. For those that don't know what a compliment sandwich is, you start out with a compliment, then you might slip in a little constructive criticism, and then we'll end with a compliment. George, let's start with you.
Oh man, I have to start off. Oh geez. Okay. All right. So let me get it going. So let's start off with the first compliment. That's an easy one. I want to address Eric Bieniemy. I thought he did a really good job. We started off 21-3. We were down. It could have been easy to pack up the game there, but he adjusted. He got our offense moving. He built plays where Sam Howell actually could just be decisive, be quick with it. And Sam Howell in his 3rd NFL start had almost 300 yards passing and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely is progressing there. And I like the fact that he outcoached the defense in the second half. He really changed things around over there. The goats are the criticism. It's kind of a hard one, actually. If I was going to criticize anyone, it's a minor one, but I'll address it. But at the end of the game, that Hail Mary, where basically they scored a touchdown at the end. Emmanuel Forbes has a great game, but typically as a rookie, you got to smack that ball to the ground, right? He wanted to get an interception. He wanted to boost his stats up a little bit, went through his hands, bounced around, got caught. I can't be, I'm going to just address it, but it's not going to be something I'm hold against him. I thought he had a great game, interception in his first game, but that's something I'll put out there as well. And then I'll go back to I like Brian Robinson. I thought Brian Robinson had a really great game as well. That's something we talked about last week, fellas. I was like, something I want to see improve. I want to see the run game improve, especially going against the Buffalo Bills and the Eagles coming up. I think it's imperative to have a great rushing attack and to kind of control the clock. And it was just great to see him break out. He had 87 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And honestly, like, it was on his back. We kind of like, our offense got moving again, and we, came back and we won the game. So that's my compliment sandwich right there.
It's interesting. The new NFL is passing to get to the run. It was always kind of the opposite, right? You pounded with the run game to get 30 passes in the first half for Sam Howell. If you'd have told me that, I would have thought that they for sure were going to lose that football game. So they get a lot of credit for that. And I think the coaching staff and Gibson get a little credit there too, George, because they actually ended up with a 50-50 split.
They did.
Would have been easy to put AG in the doghouse and move on, but he had some big plays that they needed for sure yesterday. All right, Tony, what does your compliment sandwich look like here?
Before I say that, I just want to respond to the last thing you said. The other great thing about Gibson yesterday, or the management of the team, the coaching of the team, they used him, I think, the way that we need to use him now. Not so much a running back, but catching the ball, out of the backfield or wherever. I think that was great. So, all right, my compliment sandwich. My first compliment, this was I was kind of torn between making my compliment Sam Howell, who I think is tremendous. So I'm going to go Sam Howell because here's the thing. You mentioned it earlier, Doug. This is his third start. The guy is going to make mistakes. It's early in his career. He's 23 years old, but boy, the poise that he has shown, you go back to the Cowboys game last year, and so far this year, the poise that he has shown, the short memory that he has after there's a mistake comes right back out. I thought one of the criticisms after last week's game was you got to get rid of the ball. You got to get rid of the ball sooner. I thought in the first half that was still a bit of an issue. It seemed to get better in the second half. I don't know if he was reminded during halftime or whatever, but this is a guy who I think has a real future. He's just going to get better and better. Is he going to have a game where he throws an interception and we lose? Probably. These things take time. Troy Aikman was 0-11, I think, when he first started playing. So there you go. Sam Howell, compliment. Criticism. We've got to get away. Yesterday I was a little despondent in the first half because I thought this is what I've seen for the last few years. A 100%. Slow start. We've got to get away from these slow starts so that we don't have to dig ourselves out of a big hole. Great to see that we could do it yesterday, but you're going to have a tougher time doing that if you get way behind the Bills. So we've got to get rid of the slow starts and hit the gate running. My other compliment would be to the team as a whole, because this was really a team effort. I think you're right about the halftime adjustments. That's something we haven't seen for years. But there was clearly halftime adjustments. The defense came out to play. It was almost like they took it on their backs. Okay, we got to help the offense out. And then the offense responded before that. But so resilience, team effort, love it. There was a lot to go around. A lot of people had hands in this.
I tweeted yesterday, hey, Commandos, please drop the halftime speech because it must have been something immaculate because they came out ready to go in the second half. But Tony, I agree with you. That was one of the things I had on my notes. If nobody was going to say it, is can't continue with the slow starts. You can't put yourself in those holes and expect to beat the really good teams in the league. Right. That being said, I don't think that was a bad game by Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they caught a decrepit quarterback yesterday and just beat up on him.
Nope.
That's not what happened yesterday. Nope. That looked much more like the original Russell Wilson than it did maybe last week. Yep. All right, Adam, tell us what your sandwich looks like.
All right, you guys stole my thunder a little with the Howell, EB adjustments, etc.
Tough to go last.
Shameless plug. I wrote about Chase Young coming back. A lot of people are like, he's going to suck. And my initial thought was the way this defense looked last week. I think you add him back into the fold, it's only going to get better. So he adds a different, option to their, even though he was on a snap count. But man, a sack and a half, 2 tackles for a loss. I think he showed that the rust was shaken off. So I think that you have some 2 pivotal games coming up, and I think it's huge now that Chase Young is playing at this level. And I think it can't be understated that Sweat and him are that close, and that makes all the difference. We talked, for years, talked about Payne and John Allen. They're that close, and I think when you can play off guys like that much, the communication just turns into eye signals. It doesn't even turn into talking anymore, and that's the kind of thing we saw with.
You could see Montez was excited to have him back.
I watched the game back, and I slowed it down a lot yesterday. And there was a lot of times I just saw one or the other just staring at each other and didn't even see their lips moving. So that's the kind of cohesion that I think gives this team a chance to be a 9-10-1 at minimum, and hopefully challenge for the division. But I'm going to be a broken record when it comes to my concerns, man. These tackles, man. Wiley, I said from the get-go I was concerned that he should have been playing guard because I've talked to everyone that I know from Kansas City, and they're like, decent talent. Eric Bieniemy should know to put him at guard instead of right tackle. And Leno, I think what you have in Leno every weekend when he starts facing speed rushes. Gregory, although he's really good, we're going to see a lot better pass rushes than him, and that's a huge concern. So I think the mistakes that Sam Howell made, I think you got to understand under the kind of duress he's doing, he's looking to escape. He's looking to keep some plays alive. But, man, when it's collapsing like this and, just stupid penalties, I think it's a big concern. And this is pretty much, in my opinion, what could be holding them back to, really challenging for the division this year. But, kudos to the way they played. And I think that Sam Howell, I think we've got a baller in a quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Before the game, I had tweeted out 2 things that I'd like to see. I said, I hope they run more screens.
Yeah.
They did that. The screen game was really good. The tight end screen. I mean, if he doesn't stumble there, Turner's got a chance to run that thing all the way to the house. Yep. The other thing I asked for was more design blitzed. They did that yesterday. Didn't always work. They got beat. That Jerry Jeudy could have been a big bomb when they sent Manuel Forbes. But I liked the extra blitzes. Usually, listen, I understand sending 4 home and being able to get productive pass rushes is the cheat code, as they say, because you get to drop everybody back. But more blitzes I thought were important from a guy that doesn't usually do them. I was excited about that. George, you brought the PFF grades with you?
Yes, I did.
What were some standouts from yesterday?
So I'm looking at it right now. We'll start off with offense, fellas. And what stood out to me is the number 1 offensive rated player was Sadiq Charles, believe it or not, 82.9 at left guard. He did a great job there. Logan Thomas with a 78.9 PFF score, then Brian Robinson, then Cole Turner, then running it out, Sam Howell. So those are top 5 PFF scores. What do you guys think, fellas?
I liked it. And I thought, listen, if Logan Thomas doesn't make that catch, I'm not sure. Like, you can go back to the forced fumble of Wilson and say that's where the game changed. And I'm totally with you on that. That's probably true. But if Logan Thomas doesn't catch that on 4th down, I don't see how you possibly are in that game. Right. And also, I think it's important. This doesn't have too much with PFF grades, but it just kind of popped in my mind. Rod Rivera was on my good list too.
I was going to say that. I was just about to say that.
That was a lot more riverboat Ron.
Yeah, going for 2
in a while. Going for 2. They had a couple where they punted that. Listen, that field goal that he decided to go for to go up, a lot of people wanted him to punt. That was more than a makeable field goal.
Yeah.
And that's, they're going to have to figure out what's going on with Cheeseman. I mean, they drafted him, right, Tony? I mean, that's going to be a problem.
What's happening?
2 weeks in a row. 2 weeks in a row.
That's your job.
Yes. Apparently, they asked him, or I don't know if they asked him. I have not heard yet. I've asked around a little bit. He has switched up his snapping style.
Oh, I did hear that.
Whether they asked him to do it, I would assume they did. I can't imagine he just decided to switch it all of a sudden because he had a fairly good year the first couple of years. So who decided to make him switch there? I don't know. Adam, do you have any information on that?
I briefly heard something like that. It could be, with the coaching philosophy. I agree, though. I don't think it's something he just changed on its own. So I don't know. I don't think that's one of those things that I don't think we're going to hear much about. But I think the reporters, that's definitely something, even though that's not a popular question, I hope to see a few of them ask not just one question, a couple, because again, 2 consecutive weeks, these are the kind of things that cost you a game. So luckily it didn't. So I really hope, there's at least bringing someone in for competition, same. And I'll say the same for Sly. I guess I'm not on board with a lot of the people. I'm agreed that the snaps were an issue, but I still thought that the competition wasn't a legit one for the kicker. And I think with the long snapper too, they need to bring somebody in to see how it goes, because I think this is early enough that they can fix it. If they wait, this could start being, an habitual issue.
It's an odd thing. The league's been doing this for 4 or 5 years now, where it is more important that the kicker can boot it out of the back of the end zone every time for that field position than it is the field goals. And I don't know who decided that was the way we were going to start doing football, but I hear it all the time. Like, why is Joey Sly here? He's got a huge leg and he kicks out of the end zone every time.
Right.
Okay. I mean, they get paid to know more about football than me, but it seems odd.
How many times do you have to kick a 60-yard field goal?
That's true. That's true.
Right. Yeah.
Interesting, Adam. You brought it up earlier. The snap count for Chase Young, who, by the way, looked super athletic yesterday, and you could see the burst was back. He played 2 less snaps than Montez Sweat.
Right.
Like, he was not on a pitch count at all, which I thought was good. Last year, we know he was nervous about the knee, and rightfully so. I'm not going to begrudge a man for having to have a full reconstruct and be nervous about getting back on the field. This situation was not that, right? Like, I mean, maybe being in game shape, but he looked like the guy that got drafted 2 overall. George, his production is going to be important for a team that is going to have to rely on that front 4 to win football games.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And talk about PFF scores. He was the second highest player on the team. He had a 76.1, had a pass rush grade of 84.6. The only person higher than him was Deron Payne. And we got to talk about Deron Payne later on in the show. Deron Payne has a great season so far. But yeah, I agree. I think Chase Young has that explosive ability. What really impressed me was that run from behind. Like Russell Wilson, the first sack, the full sack that he had, Russell Wilson was running around. Chase Young had that backside pursuit, dove, vertical to the, horizontal to the ground, and actually pulled Russell Wilson down, which was impressive. And I think I tweeted out that he was warming up in the second quarter, it was kind of minimal impact, but you started to see him kind of catch a groove, kind of catch a flow for how the game was going. Then it started to improve a little bit more so. And I think if he can catch a groove, have 3 or 4 games under his belt and build that chemistry with his teammates again, it's going to be very impactful. And I think he can create, he had a second half, I think 2 tackles for loss last game. If you get a forced fumble and things of that nature, start changing the game a little bit, but a turnover or 2 really changes the pace of a game. So I think it'd really be important for him to do so.
And even it's harder to even just, applying that pressure to the quarterback where he's got to get out of the pocket, whatever, it's not flashy, but that has an impact as well. And I think the fact that he was back, it's hard to account for all of those guys. So having him in there is a help. You can't double team all these guys. So,
And you know what? And yesterday, I saw what I was hoping to see. I saw a new arsenal from Chase Young. He's doing some Montez Sweat moves. It's just a dig swim and basically going under the pads and just pushing them up and getting them off their leverage. And he did it 2 or 3 times yesterday, and he won on 2 of those. So seeing that, it's not a luck thing and it's not just a hustle thing. There's a lot of technique going on. And I think that's what he wasn't doing. Even his rookie year, he wasn't doing that. He was relying on his bull rush and that stutter step that it started to become a little more prototypical and I think telegraphing it, so teams knew to see it. But he added a new to it from his toolbox yesterday, and I'm telling you, if he can stay healthy, I think this is going to be all the world. But Deron Payne, we're talking about old school red. I get Dexter Manley vibes, man. I really do. Different kind of players, totally, but I'm getting the same kind of taking over game vibes, violent. And I think Deron Payne, we're talking about all these other guys, man, this is the guy that, had a huge impact on the game.
He completely erased one series, by the way, Deron Payne. There's 3 plays in a row where he had he blew up a pass. He swatted a ball down. He was, tackle for loss. Deron Payne was all over the place. I'm so happy for him because it was funny. I think John Allen is our steady Eddie. He's our, he's our captain. He's our leader. And I think, but Deron Payne has a really high high ceiling. I think he could potentially be even better. I think John Allen might be a little bit hurt with that Lisfranc injury. He might be seeing a little bit of not necessarily finishing plays right now, but Deron Payne is definitely dominating. And going back to Chase Young, one last piece, I love what Tony said. I think the best part about our defensive line is very complementary, right? So we have 2 elite defensive tackles and 2 high-end potential defensive ends, right? depending on the matchup and depending on the week, there's going to be a deficit on the offensive line. So if the guard is weak one time, the defensive tackle can penetrate, or if a tackle is weak, our end can penetrate, and just kind of compressing the pocket and kind of having different angles of attacking the quarterback is fantastic. So I'm looking forward to that all year long. It'd be great.
And I just want to say one thing. It's something we haven't talked about or thought to talk about, but 2 weeks in a row, Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams, they're playing off the energy on this line. So it's one thing to have, their high-priced playmakers making plays, but now you have these back-end guys that are not just getting tackles for loss, they're getting sacked. So I think that can't be understated. And, you got this guy Jones from Louisiana in the wings. Henry, we haven't even seen him yet. So I think they're really building some depth here that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yep.
And with $85 million in cap room next year, they can afford to keep both ends if they want to.
Yeah.
Build that offensive line first.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing real? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because just the fact that you guys, all of us have mentioned so many different people and still haven't covered everybody. Forbes, who I'm so glad he's with us.
Yeah.
I think that just like a team can learn to lose and get used to losing. And I think that there's been a period of time where we've just been, mediocre or worse. And it's kind of what it is, but now they're buying into whatever it is Eric Bieniemy is selling, and they're seeing results. And when the defense steps up and then the offense steps up, these young guys are like, oh, I want to be part of this. I mean, that's a whole thing that's going on there, and it feeds off of itself. So I think these 2 wins in particular were perfect to spur us on into the rest of the season.
I agree.
I tweeted it out this morning after Harris gave Rivera the game ball last night for his 100th victory. You kind of mentioned it, Tony, as him being the guy that we needed to make that transition. I think he's going to make it very hard for Harris to move on from him. If they start winning football games, I just think that Ron's one of those guys that when you get in the room with him, you just like him.
Yeah.
And he makes you like him, and he can show you the vision. You can see the vision. The roster is really good. Yeah. They're really young, and they've got a lot of money to play with. And if Sam Howell ends up being the guy, they are in a really good position to be really effective going forward. So I'll be curious to see about that. I know everybody just assumes that EB will be the next head football coach of this team, but you're going to have to take that job from Ron Rivera. I fully believe that.
Yeah.
Tony, it feels like next week we're playing with house money. What is the team got? We'll just quickly look at next week. What do you think this team's got to do to stay in there and have a puncher's chance at this game next week?
I think, like I said earlier, you can't spot them, 15, 16, 17, 18 points. You can't do it because they won't likely have the fall off that Russell Wilson did yesterday in the second half for a second game in a row. So I think you got to start fast. You got to play up to your potential, and I'm hopeful. Bills fans travel better than Cardinals fans do, so there'll be some Bills fans out there. But I'm hoping that it will once again be by far mostly Commanders fans, and that will help spur them on. I think it's going to be tough. It's Josh Allen, it's the Bills, but after yesterday, there's
hope.
If you'd have told me yesterday that the Commanders would give up 33 points,
right,
I'd have told you that they got shellacked.
Yeah.
So this idea that because Josh Allen's going to turn the ball over a couple times, he just does that, and they don't mind that because of how explosive he is and that offense is. But there will be opportunities. That the fact that they can stay in games when we're getting into the mid-20s and 30s says a whole lot. Adam, give me a couple thoughts on what you'd like to see on Sunday.
Again, we talk about Allen. I think it all comes back to him. They've got a good run game, a very seasoned coaching staff. So, that's if you talk about Washington, let's say if they can come out fast, get a 14-point lead, that's never safe against a team like Buffalo because they'll just open it up, and that's when they're at their most dangerous. So, of course, stopping Josh Allen. But, I'm looking for some offensive line adjustments. I don't know if it's going to require, more 12 personnel. Maybe they go bigger in certain areas. Based on Logan Thomas, he's going to be out. So I think you're going to have a different look now with Hodges. They could maybe want to do a practice squad elevation for that fullback tight end hybrid we got. So we could see some different looks, and I think they need to. There need to be some more max protect, because this Buffalo D, to me, it's hands down better than the Broncos D. And I think that although he's showing he's durable, I don't think he can continue to take hits like this without missing.
I agree.
I love him. I've been scouting him since 2018, but continuous hits like this, he can't take. They have to do something about it. So that's the second thing. The last thing, man, I just want to see them get the ball in their playmakers' hands. Like we talked about the screen passes. I want to see a lot more of that. I want to see Antonio Gibson out wide. I want to see, Eric Bieniemy really starting to open it up now, because I think teams are going to get more tape on Hal, and I think they're going to show that bringing pressure is a way to attack him, but it can also be poison if you miss on it. So just a couple things that I think keep them in it. Unfortunately, I have them losing this. I had them 2-2 for the first 4 games, and I think miracles happen, but I just think Buffalo is just one of the right now that next to Kansas City, I think they're a favorite to go to the Super Bowl. So
my favorite tight end finally had his quasi breakout game in Bates.
Cole Turner. Oh, Bates. Okay,
Bates.
You love Bates. That's
Turner's,
right.
Turner's going to get plenty of looks, but with Bates will end up being tight end 1 if Logan's going to miss time. George, you're going to be there. I bet you it's going to be crazy there.
It's going to be fun, just like Tony was saying. So, I feel like week 1. Full packed stadium. People were excited, but there was a point in the game where the fans didn't have anything to cheer for. It was actually it was an ugly game. It was rainy. We were losing. It wasn't like I had someone behind me who actually I told you, Doug, he was like, we're here for you guys, and you're not giving us anything to cheer for. They're getting upset. I was like, wow. Here we go. But then in the fourth quarter, the crowd was a fever pitch. People were raising up and yelling. That's what I want. So I want a clear home field advantage. I want to limit the explosive plays. I think last week against the Broncos yesterday, Marvin Mims streaming down the middle of the field on the post pattern because the safeties couldn't talk to each other. We got to control the explosive plays. And I've been preaching it. Run the ball, man. I do like our playmakers, but I think Brian Robinson can control the clock against the Bills and keep Josh Allen on the side of the field and to keep him on the bench. I think that's a good strategy there.
It was an interesting almost 50-50 split yesterday between the running backs, and only 2 carries for Rodriguez, who had kind of gotten a lot of work in that first game. Tony, it was well worth the wait. We appreciate so much that you came on today. Had a blast.
I loved it. So if you ever have a guest fallout, cancel or something, call me. I'm willing.
Sure, we will do that for sure. Thank you so much.
Have a good one,
guys. See you guys.
Thank you, guys.